Hey guys, what's up? My name is Gabby. Welcome back to my channel, and today I'm going to be filming my May wrap-up. I apologize if I look or sound sick, but I'm not. It's just my allergies are so bad. Just everything is congested, you know? Also, I'm wearing my Reputation tour shirt because I'm still recovering from that amazing concert. I went to see Taylor Swift like a week ago, and I'm like still dead. Ugh. Back to the wrap-up. So, in the month of May, I read a total of 8 books, which amounted to 2,852 pages. The number of each genre that I read 2 young adult contemporaries, 1 historical fiction, 1 sci-fi, 1 thriller, 1 romance, 1 memoir, and 1 dystopian. It was like all over the place. Completely random. The number of ratings I gave 4 4-star books, 2 3-star books, and 2 2-star books. So it was kind of a medium month. And male versus female authors, I read 7 female authors and 1 single male author. Damn. Also, I just wanted to mention that 3 of the books that I read this month were required reads for my English class. I technically only read 5 books for pleasure, which is just sad. Let's just jump right into it. The first book that I read this month was The Underground Railroad by Colson Whitehead, and this was a required read for my English class. It is historical fiction, but it's kind of like an alternate historical fiction because this book imagines what it would be like if there was an actual Underground Railroad. This story follows this slave named Cora who's on this cotton plantation in Georgia, and the cotton plantation that she's on is run by this freaking asshole named Terrence. This book obviously has a lot of really important things to say, and I really do appreciate it for that, and I did learn a lot of new things because of this book, but at the same time, the writing style was just so hard to get into and so like clunky and distant, and I felt like I didn't know any of the characters really, and maybe that was the point, but like when I read a book I want to feel like I'm like living the life of that character, you know, and this one was just so hard to get into. If this wasn't a required reading for my English class, then I don't think I would have been able to get through this book. Yeah, I mean, I expected this to be a lot more of an emotional story because of the content matter of this, but because of the writing style being so like difficult to read and just like drawn out and slow, I found myself being more bored than like emotional through the story, which I should have been more emotional, you know? Yeah, I ended up giving this one 2 out of 5 stars. The second book I read this month was The Female of the Species by Mindy McGinnis, and this is a young adult contemporary. It follows this girl named Alex Kraft, and her older sister was raped and murdered. Her entire purpose in this book is to go and kill this guy that killed her sister. Alex is a really interesting main character because she has these like serial killer urges, but she doesn't want to use them to like harm the world. She wants to use it to make it a safer place. So she uses her serial killer urges to kill these terrible men that are like sexually assaulting women. And I think that that's a really fucking interesting book. It kind of reminded me of like Dexter because of that, you know? She was totally like a younger female Dexter. And this book was just strange and intense, and I freaking loved it. We get Alex's point of view most of the book, but we also get the perspective of her love interest, Jack, which was really interesting, and then this other girl, PK, which I didn't totally see the purpose for her point of view in this book, but you know, whatever. This book was really dark, and it had so much to say about rape culture and feminism and the way that we hold women to such higher standards in society than we hold men to. There's so much discussion that follows this book, which I really enjoy about it, so I ended up giving this one 4 out of 5 stars. It is one of the better young adult books that I've read in a while. Next book that I read was Radio Silence by Alice Oseman, and this is an audiobook that I got from my library. First off, I want to say that this is probably one of the most realistic, authentic young adult books that I've read. The way that these young adults feel in this book, like this is how young adults should be written in literature. This is how they behave, and this is how they should be represented. So this story mainly revolves around this girl named Frances, who's biracial and bisexual, which is really cool. And then she starts developing this friendship with this guy named Aled, who's asexual / demisexual. And Frances is obsessed with this podcast called University. Frances and Aled just start to build this friendship because of University. I think that Aled is my favorite character in this book, and I kind of wish that this book was told from his point of view. I loved the emphasis on this book in doing what makes you happy, and the fact that university isn't for everyone and that we shouldn't be pressuring every person in society to go to college. It's not for everyone, and that's okay. And it really like hit close to home for me right now because I just started my first quarter at university, and I can already feel that like overwhelming pressure. You need to go to college, you need to make a life for yourself, you know, and like this book confronts that like straight up. And so this book was definitely hitting home for me at some parts. I was like, whoa, it was so good. It's so important, and anybody that's like questioning whether or not they should go to college or struggling with their like what do I do with my life kind of thing, read this book. Amazing. So I ended up giving this one 4.5 out of 5 stars. Fourth book I read this month was The Perfect Mother by Amy Molloway, and this was my May Book of the Month thriller pick. It's being compared to Big Little Lies, and it follows this group of mothers who all gave birth in the month of May, and then one of the babies goes missing when they all go out one night. Police and the detectives start looking into the lives of all these mothers, and they uncover all these secrets within the mothers, and unfortunately this book ended up being very like meh and forgettable, and I didn't really connect with any of the mothers. I thought they were all just very like one-dimensional, and as far as thrillers go, this was very mild and kind of like predictable in a way. I just clearly wasn't invested at all in these characters. I ended up giving this one 3 out of 5 stars. It was very mediocre. The next book that I read was The Last Black Unicorn by Tiffany Haddish. I listened to the audiobook for this one as well. Listen to this audiobook because I love Tiffany Haddish. Ever since I saw Girls Trip, I just thought that she was one of the most hilarious comedians that I've ever seen, and I really, really wanted to listen to the audiobook for like months. I've been trying to get my hands on it, and I was so disappointed. This book becomes extremely offensive to handicapped people and overweight people. She just goes to this chapter about how she dated this handicapped man, and she kind of like mocks his voice in the audiobook, like the way that he talks. Like, I just found it really like fucked up and inappropriate. A lot of this book was really like shallow and superficial, and all the things she was talking about were like about her looks or other people's looks, or like she was just judging people a lot on their appearance. Like, maybe I'm just being too sensitive and like this is supposed to be a comedy, it's supposed to be funny, and I'm just taking it too hard, but like there's a point where you cross a line sometimes in comedy, and I feel like this book definitely crossed it as far as making fun of certain people goes, you know? Like, I don't think making fun of handicapped people is ever okay in comedy, and I don't think making fun of overweight people, like, you know, like she was talking about like one guy, like she didn't want to, who asked her out or something, I don't really remember, but it was like she made fun of this guy because his titties were bigger than hers. It's just not funny to like make fun of overweight people. I don't know, I'm kind of surprised that this book is getting as high reviews as it is because of the problematic content that is in this book, but maybe it's just because I am being too sensitive and people actually find it funny. But I don't know if I'm just being like too much of a stick up the ass, but I didn't find it funny. It really wasn't funny. Like, there wasn't 1 second in this book that I like laughed out loud, which is sad because I was expecting to. Like, I really wanted to love this book because I love Tiffany Haddish, and now it just, this book kind of gave me the perspective of her. Like, she's just kind of mean and like cruel to these people. Like, she just is kind of like selfish, and I don't know. I felt uncomfortable while I was listening to this, so I ended up giving it 2 out of 5 stars. The next book I read was The Left Hand of Darkness by Ursula K. Le Guin. This was a required reading for my English class. This is a sci-fi fantasy book that's from the 1960s. Basically follows this human named Genli I, goes to this planet called Winter, where their gender is ambiguous. Like, they are both female and male at the same time, and depending on the time of year, they can become more male or more female. This book was really fascinating because of that, like, don't get me wrong, but because I'm not personally a huge fan of fantasy, it was really, really hard for me to get through this book. I mean, honestly, this book was like my Everest, and at times, I thought I wasn't even going to be able to get through this, but because it was a required read, I forced myself to get through it. This book does have some really interesting things to say about gender, and it really points out how humans are so obsessed with things being either feminine or masculine, and how we can't really grasp the idea of gender fluidity and how it is possible to be both genders and that that's okay. I mean, this book was really interesting, especially since this did come out in the 1960s. Like, it was way ahead of its time, I feel like. Unfortunately for me, the writing was beyond difficult to get into, and I just didn't enjoy this book the way that I wanted to because of that, and that's through no fault of its own, but it's just this is a me thing, you know? I ended up giving this one 3 out of 5 stars, but if you like fantasy, then I think you would like this. It's just, I don't, you know? So this isn't something I would pick up on my own. The next book I read was The Kiss Quotient by Helen Huang. Thank you for the arc, Berkeley. This book comes out on June 5th, really close. This is a new romance novel. It follows this girl named Stella Lane who has Asperger's, and her love interest Michael is a Vietnamese Swedish escort. Because of her Asperger's, she's always had trouble with intimacy of any kind, whether it's relationships or sex, and so she hires this guy named Michael, who's an escort, to teach her how to be better at romance and sex and intimacy and all that. It's so cute. It's the cutest. I mean, it's such a typical like romance cliche, you know, like I'm bad at sex, so you hire somebody to like help you be better. Like, it's such a cliche thing, but like it's the cutest and most like adorable romance like ever. And it's great because it's an own voices story. The author is a female that has Asperger's, but Stella was just so quirky and adorable, and I related to her social anxieties so much. And Michael, don't even get me started on Michael. He was so romantic and charming, and he always asked for permission, which I think is so important. Like, this is what consent looks like, and this is how romance should be written in the romance genre. Like, this is romantic. Fucking beautiful. I ended up giving this one 4 out of 5 stars, and the only reason why I knocked off a star is because the conflict towards the end just felt a little bit cliche, and like it was only thrown in for the sake of having a conflict, because as you know, all romance novels, like, they're not just gonna be like happily ever after for the rest of the book. They have to get to a point where they have a conflict and break up and then like whatever, but it just felt so forced in this book, like, and it was like if they just freaking communicated better, none of it would have happened, you know. And it just kind of bothers me when a romance has a very ridiculous reason for the breakup. That's the only reason why I knocked off a star, and maybe that was too harsh, but like, I loved this book. I was reading it all day during the day, and then at night I like turned on my iPhone light so I could continue to read it, and then the next day I was like reading it outside. I took it everywhere with me. I loved it. I couldn't put it down. It was so cute. Definitely check out this book when it comes out in June. It's so fucking adorable. And the last book, the 8th book that I read in May, is The Year of the Flood by Margaret Atwood. This was another required reading for my English class, and this is technically the second book in a trilogy, but they can all be read as standalones. And this is a apocalyptic dystopian adult book. It mainly follows this group of people called the Gardeners, and they have like predicted the end of the world. They've predicted this waterless flood that's going to like wipe out humanity as we know it. The Gardeners are basically this like cult group of vegans, basically. They care so much about the planet and they want to like save the planet. It mainly follows the perspective of these two women named Toby and Wren. This book was really sad because it showed the darkest parts of humanity and how if we keep behaving the way we are now and treating the planet the way we are now, then this isn't too far off from this like downward spiral that's already happening in the world, you know? And I think that this book had so many thought-provoking passages regarding society, humanity, our future, religion, veganism, so much more. Just a side note, if you're vegan or vegetarian, then I think you would fucking love this book. A very sad and realistic look into our future, I think, and it was very beautifully written. This was the first Margaret Atwood book that I've ever read, and it definitely won't be my last. It was just very thought-provoking and stimulating, and just like definitely made me think about the future of humanity and where we're headed if we continue to destroy the planet the way we currently are. This was surprising. It was very good. It's one of my favorites that I've read for my classes so far. Those were all of the books that I read in May. As far as like following my TBR that I posted at the beginning of this month, I think I did pretty decent. I mean, I actually read most of the books that I said I was going to read, and I didn't include the Kiss Quotient in my TBR, but I didn't realize I was going to be getting this book this month, so it would have been in there if I had known. I know that I included the book Tell Me Lies in my TBR video, but I only just got this in the mail yesterday, so I wasn't able to read it in time for the end of May, but so this will definitely be something I'm reading first thing in June, and so you'll definitely see this one in my June wrap-up. I think I actually did stick to my TBR, which is fucking crazy. I've never done that before, yay! I'll put the TBR video in the description if you want to like fact check me, but right now I'm in the like part of my quarter where like everything is happening because it ends on June 14th, and so like all the assignments are building and piling, and I only have like 2 weeks left, and it's fucking crazy. So as soon as June 14th happens, then I'm gonna have so much more free time to read, and I'm like really looking forward to it because this summer I'm not taking any classes, so I'm gonna have the entire summer to read. Look forward to a video coming soon about like books I'm wanting to read this summer or that kind of thing, because once the middle of June hits, I'm gonna have so much more free time to read again, yay! Have you read any of these books that I mentioned in this video? what are your thoughts on them, and how many books did you read in May? What was like the best book that you read in May? Here we come, summer, am I right? Yes. Thank you guys so much for watching as always, and I'll see you guys next time.